I hadn't planned to stay for the entire committee hearing. Most of them are all bark, no bite. But when I heard Adam Schiff would be testifying, live and under oath, in front of Judge Jeanine Pirro, I knew I had to stay glued to my seat. The chamber was unusually tense that morning. Cameras rolled quietly behind tinted glass, and media personnel huddled in the back rows like vultures, waiting for drama. Schiff, usually composed and lawyer-slick, looked uncharacteristically tense as he adjusted his tie, waiting for Pirro to take her seat. Judge Pirro walked in like a storm, heels clicking, eyes sharp, voice commanding. "Mr. Schiff, let's get one thing clear," she said before the gavel even dropped. "You're not here to grandstand. You're here to answer." Schiff forced a smile. "I intend to do just that, Your Honor." But everyone watching could feel it, something was off. He kept glancing at his folder, flipping through pages like he was trying to find a script that didn't exist. Pirro leaned forward. "Let's start with your contacts during the intelligence memo leaks last December. Did you, or did you not, have direct communication with any journalist prior to that story hitting the press?" The room fell silent. Schiff blinked. I don't recall the exact dates, but, answer the question," Pirro cut in coldly. "I may have communicated," he said, voice cracking, "but that doesn't imply wrongdoing." It was then that someone in the gallery muttered, "Here it comes," because everyone knew, that wasn't the question Pirro wanted answered. It was just the warm-up. Judge Pirro didn't flinch. "You may have communicated," she repeated, voice laced with disbelief. "Mr. Schiff, this isn't amateur hour. You're a sitting congressman. You either did or you didn't." Schiff shifted in his seat. His hand trembled slightly as he lifted his water glass. The microphones picked up the sound, clink, a subtle but telling clue. The pressure was mounting, and it was visible. "I was contacted by a journalist, yes," he finally admitted, eyes darting toward the gallery. "But only after the initial leak occurred." Pirro arched an eyebrow. "Is that a sworn statement?" "Yes." She leaned back, slowly. "Then explain why we have metadata, time-stamped messages, and calendar logs showing you scheduled a private Zoom call with that same journalist, 3 days before the leak went public." Gasps rippled across the room. Schiff's eyes widened, his composure visibly cracking. That's a misunderstanding. Those logs were taken out of context." "Then enlighten us," Pirro snapped. "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you orchestrated a leak to manipulate public perception during an active investigation." Adam's mouth opened, then closed. No words. No clever legal retort. Just silence. The cameras zoomed in, catching every second of his hesitation, live, coast to coast. Someone in the back whispered, "He just buried himself." And Judge Pirro wasn't done yet. Adam Schiff gripped the edges of the witness table like it was the only thing keeping him upright. The silence from his end was deafening. Even the reporters had stopped typing. Judge Pirro leaned forward again, lowering her voice to a razor's edge. "Congressman Schiff, you are under oath. Do you understand the consequences of perjury in federal proceedings?" He nodded stiffly. "Good," she continued. "Because we have sworn statements from 2 aides, your own staff, saying you instructed them to scrub calendar entries and delete the chat logs just hours after that meeting took place." A wave of murmurs swelled in the gallery. Schiff's jaw tightened. "That's not what happened," he managed to say, but it came out thin, more like a plea than a defense. "Then tell the court exactly what happened," Pirro demanded. "Because right now, it looks like we're staring at a coordinated cover-up." Schiff glanced over at his attorney, who didn't move a muscle, just stared forward, lips tight, like he'd already accepted the inevitable. "I was trying to protect confidential information," Schiff said shakily. "Not mislead anyone." Pirro sat back in her chair. "Interesting. Because you're also on record claiming you never had prior knowledge of the leak." Would you like to revise that statement now before I hold you in contempt? The moment hung in the air like a guillotine. Schiff rubbed his forehead, his voice barely audible. I need a recess. Pirro didn't blink. Request denied. And just like that, Schiff was cornered, live on camera, with nowhere left to hide. The courtroom was dead silent except for the soft hum of cameras and the occasional shuffle of a foot or cough stifled behind a hand. Adam Schiff sat frozen. Beads of sweat had formed at his temple. His hands were clenched tightly together in front of him, like he was holding on to the last bit of control he had left. Judge Pirro adjusted her robe and continued, her tone deliberate and merciless. You've built a career presenting yourself as a beacon of transparency and accountability. But what we have here, Congressman, are signs of manipulation, deception, and willful obstruction. Schiff's voice cracked as he spoke. I've served with integrity. This is a mischaracterization of my actions. Pirro raised a document into the air, holding it between her fingers. Then explain this memo, time-stamped and emailed from your private account, outlining media coordination strategies tied directly to classified intel. A low rumble of disbelief rippled through the press section. Every head in the room turned toward Schiff, whose face was now ghost-pale. That memo was preliminary. It wasn't acted upon, he stammered. That's not what the journalist you spoke to said in their sworn deposition, Pirro replied sharply. In fact, they claimed you explicitly suggested which parts of the document to quote in order to maximize political fallout. Schiff looked like he'd been slapped. His mouth moved, but nothing came out. Just a low, almost inaudible wheeze. And then, just like that, he slammed his folder shut, stood up abruptly, and snapped, "This is a circus. A political hit job." Judge Pirro didn't even flinch. That outburst just earned you a formal warning, Congressman. The gavel struck the bench once. You will sit down and conduct yourself accordingly, or you will be removed. Adam Schiff slowly sat back down, his breathing heavy. But the damage had already been done. The headlines were writing themselves. By now, phones were buzzing across the chamber. Reporters whispered frantically into microphones. Social media was flooding with live updates. Schiff loses it under Pirro's grilling, major leak confirmed, breaking, Schiff implicated in memo manipulation, full hearing video going viral, but Judge Pirro wasn't finished. She opened a slim red folder on the bench and pulled out a printed email. This, Congressman, is a subpoenaed copy of your message to a known political strategist, sent just hours before your scheduled appearance on national television. The subject line reads, "Positioning the narrative." Care to explain? Schiff looked stricken. That email wasn't related to the leak. Pirro narrowed her eyes. Really? Because the body of that email references the memo by name, and even includes bullet points on how to frame the release as organic outrage. The courtroom tensed like a coiled spring. You could feel it in the air, the moment when something bigger than one man's reputation was starting to crack open. At the defense table, Schiff's attorney finally leaned in and whispered something in his ear, probably something like, "We need to stop this now." But Schiff didn't listen. Instead, he leaned forward into the mic, voice breaking under pressure. "This is political theater. I've been targeted before, and I'll say again, I did what was necessary to protect the public's right to know." A short, hard silence followed. Pirro's response was cold and clinical. "Then I hope you're ready to explain that necessity, to a grand jury." The gallery erupted. The gavel slammed. Order. In less than 30 minutes, Adam Schiff had gone from cool-headed veteran congressman to the face of a rapidly unfolding scandal, caught on camera for the whole country to see. Outside the courthouse, the world was already spinning. Major news networks had cut into live programming. Pundits were scrambling to reframe the narrative. Schiff's press team released a frantic statement calling the hearing a gross misuse of judicial authority, but the damage was irreversible. Inside, Judge Pirro wasn't slowing down. She stood, pacing slowly behind the bench, her voice calm but heavy with implication. "Mr. Schiff, based on the evidence presented thus far, I am formally requesting a review by the Ethics Committee and referring this case to the U.S. Attorney's Office for further investigation." Schiff sat slumped, no longer responding. His eyes stared at the table in front of him, jaw tight, lips pressed shut. He looked like a man whose political career had just been yanked out from under him. Suddenly, a staffer burst into the back of the courtroom, whispering urgently to a clerk who rushed a folded note to Pirro. She read it, nodded once, and looked back at Schiff. "It appears," she said, lifting her eyes slowly, "that your office has just been served a federal search warrant. Agents are on site." Gasps. Audible, collective gasps. Even some reporters stood up involuntarily. Schiff's attorney raised a hand. "Your Honor, we request an immediate recess and access to our client in private." Pirro nodded. "Granted. 10 minutes." The gavel fell again, but it didn't matter. In every corner of the nation, viewers weren't waiting for the recess. They were replaying the moment Schiff unraveled. Frame by frame. A meltdown. A misstep. And now, a full-blown federal crisis. The courtroom cleared in silence, but the tension clung to the air like smoke. Reporters rushed out, cell phones glued to their ears, scrambling to confirm the search at Schiff's office. Outside, a growing crowd of protesters and spectators formed, phones raised, news choppers circling overhead. Inside a private conference room adjacent to the chamber, Schiff sat with his head in his hands. His attorney paced behind him, livid. "You should have shut up the moment she brought up the memo," the lawyer hissed. "You played right into her hands." Schiff didn't answer. "Do you understand what happens if the feds find that encrypted drive? The one your aide said was relocated to your home office?" Finally, Schiff lifted his head, face pale but stern. "They won't find it. I had it destroyed last week." The room went still. "You what?" the attorney whispered. "I had it destroyed," Schiff repeated, firmer this time. "If that drive fell into the wrong hands, the whole party burns. I took the hit. Better me than all of them." His lawyer stared at him. "Adam, do you even hear yourself?" Schiff leaned back in the chair. "If Pirro wants to martyr me, fine. But she's not getting her spectacle. I'll walk out of that courtroom, take the microphone, and control the narrative before she can twist it further." The lawyer shook his head. "There's no narrative left to control. You're trending in real time under #SchiffCollapse." Outside the door, a clerk knocked. "Time's up. Back to the bench." Schiff stood slowly, adjusted his jacket, and took a deep breath. "Then let's end it on my terms." But back in the courtroom, Judge Pirro had one last surprise waiting. As Adam Schiff re-entered the courtroom, the buzz was deafening. Reporters had returned to their seats, lips tight, fingers hovering over keyboards. Every camera was locked in on his face. But Schiff held his chin high, shoulders squared. He walked like a man prepared to fall, but determined to do so with dignity. Judge Pirro was already seated, the courtroom still under order. "Congressman Schiff," she said, voice crisp, "before we resume, there's a matter of supplemental evidence." Schiff froze. Pirro gestured to the court clerk, who stepped forward holding a small black flash drive inside a sealed evidence bag. "This device," Pirro said, "was obtained less than 30 minutes ago, not from your congressional office, but from a private cybersecurity firm in Alexandria. An anonymous source turned it in after noticing a pattern of encrypted data being deleted off-site." Schiff's eyes narrowed. "That could belong to anyone." "Unlikely," Pirro replied smoothly. "Because preliminary forensics show it was synced with your congressional email account, just 6 days ago." A collective gasp filled the room again. Schiff looked to his lawyer, who sat motionless, staring down at the table. "Pending analysis of this drive," Pirro continued, "I am authorizing a temporary injunction barring you from accessing any government devices or secure briefings." Effective immediately. That was it. Not a conviction. Not an arrest. But a political execution, live and televised. Schiff slowly sank into his chair. He had fought scandal before. He had survived investigations. But this time, the camera didn't catch a fighter. It caught a man who just watched everything slip through his fingers. The session adjourned in eerie silence. No applause. No outrage. Just the collective thud of realization: Adam Schiff's political armor had cracked, and the world had watched it live. Outside the courthouse, chaos erupted. Crowds surged against police barricades. Protesters shouted across from supporters, both sides waving signs and smartphones. Reporters shouted into cameras, breaking: Schiff barred from security access pending federal review. Pirro strikes: flash drive may contain classified media leak plans. Inside his armored SUV, Schiff sat in the back seat, unmoving. His aide handed him a phone. Dozens of missed calls. Messages from colleagues, staffers, and DC insiders were flooding in. But the most chilling message was pinned at the top: they're pulling committee assignments. You're done. Jay. He locked the screen and leaned his head against the tinted window. Outside, the media frenzy continued. Helicopters hovered. Every step he made from this point on would be dissected and played in slow motion. Meanwhile, back inside, Judge Pirro stood at her chamber's window, arms folded. "Get ready," she said quietly to her clerk. "The real investigations start tomorrow." Because this wasn't just about Adam Schiff anymore. This was about who else had known. Who helped it happen. And how far the rot went. The misstep wasn't just Schiff's. It might have opened the door to something much bigger. 3 days later, Washington, D.C. wasn't just buzzing, it was imploding. Leaked snippets from the flash drive were already circulating through unnamed sources. They revealed carefully orchestrated media strategies, selective leaks to favored journalists, and what appeared to be influence maps targeting swing state voters using classified intel summaries. In a matter of hours, Adam Schiff went from cornered witness to suspected coordinator. Congressional panels scrambled to issue subpoenas. Allies distanced themselves. Staffers resigned. He was pulled from 3 key committees overnight. The Ethics Committee released a statement saying Schiff's conduct will undergo full disciplinary review. And as the country debated whether this was justice or political theater, one image dominated the evening news: Schiff, alone on the Capitol steps, no podium, no entourage, no press badge. Just a man holding a crumpled folder, staring at the dome as if seeing it for the last time. In a hastily arranged press conference, Schiff made one final statement: "This process has been corrupted by theatrics and personal vendettas. I've served this country with everything I had. If this is the price of transparency, so be it. But history will decide who was right." Judge Pirro, when asked for comment, gave a single sentence: "History has already started." And with that, the nation moved on, but the scandal didn't. Investigations expanded. Depositions followed. A once familiar name became a cautionary tale whispered behind closed doors. Adam Schiff had melted down. But the system? It was just heating up.